And it's on Amazon right now, one of the best sellers. So
It's very gratifying. Hi, welcome to DisruptEDtv, where our ideas can change your school for the better. And our guest today is Skye Donzelli, who's a faculty member at Memorial Elementary. Skye, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you.
It's wonderful to be here.
And Joe, Skye is talking about a subject that's very important to me because I have family members, I grew up with family members who really could have benefited by Skye's different approach to, I hate to call it special education. Your point today, Skye, is that children with challenges can be included in a lot of the educational experiences that we normally associate with regular children, whatever we mean. And breaking down those barriers is really what you're about. Isn't that true?
Yes, and using all the resources available to set up the parameters so everyone can be successful. I had a vision for creating a STEM room to prepare students for special needs in the 21st century with life skills and career readiness. And in order to do that, I needed to focus in on what jobs would be available for them. And we hear often that we don't know what jobs will be out there in the future, but we know what skills they're going to need. And so it was my vision to create a room where we had circuits, coding, robotics, and 3D design.
Terrific.
Yes.
You know, these are things that we'd normally consider to be too challenging, let's say. And but that hasn't been what you've seen.
Well, that's because I used the experts around me to make sure we set up the parameters so everyone could be successful. So what we started with was we have a behavioral therapist, Maureen Rubin, on the team, and she let us know what triggers of the environment could stimulate behavior that we wanted to avoid. So we created, dim lights, and also areas where sensory activities, so part of our STEM would be like sand, where you could be soothed and then go back to your activity.
Interesting. So we're talking about the whole spectrum of challenge here. I mean, it's everybody. Maybe you can characterize that.
Okay, well, Memorial School is a 3 through 5 elementary school in Howe Township. And in our school, we have general ed, as well as some self-contained classes for autism, multiple disabled, and cognitively impaired. But we have an inclusive environment where it's not just in the STEM room that's inclusive, but it's built into our whole curriculum.
Great. And what's interesting about this to me is that you've taken the time to do the research to figure out what kind of a classroom you need to build to make those kids feel safe enough and comfortable enough to be able to move forward. And that's and that when you mentioned you had a behavioral specialist on your team, that is so important, because if you just stick them in a room with the usual stimuli, they'll be the best won't be brought out of them, which is really what you're trying to do.
Exactly. We want to get to the objective. In order to get to the objective, you have to have the right behavior. And even it comes down to the right furniture. So we had an occupational therapist in our team as well. And she helped us pick out universal designed furniture. So we had ball chairs, we had wobble stools, so you don't hear the term sit still in the STEM room. We have standing desks, we have squishy chairs, so if you want to sit on the floor, we don't care where you're learning as long as you're learning.
As long as you're learning, and the important thing, a point here is that the kids will discipline themselves. They don't need to be disciplined. They will discipline themselves if they feel comfortable. And I saw a little bit of the video that we're going to see a little later on, and I know a lot of what you do is hands-on. Project associated with. So talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so the hands-on aspect is we wanted to create all different centers, but it had a hands-on activity, so it was very concrete, and a digital activity as well. So for instance, when you go talk about coding, because one of our centers is coding, we have robots that are actually coded by markers. So the different colors mean a different code to the robots. And we also use Scratch, which is like a block coding program. And it's almost like building Legos, but it's digital. So students can code, but however they want. And for the hands-on expert, we have our media specialist, Jen Stannard, and she handled all the STEM that required all the hands-on training, in the building of it, and the day-to-day overseeing, so teachers can come down and sign out the room whenever they wanted.
Well, that's great.
You created an incredibly great environment for this.
That's the.
It's unbelievable.
And I think that's really the key.
Absolutely.
I mean, it sounds to me like the key is not to lower your expectations for challenged children.
No.
What you do is meet them where they are and then bring them where they need to be by giving them the freedom to get there themselves and the tools they need to get there.
Yes, and creating that safe environment.
That's and the kids work together on projects. They don't work alone.
Yes, not only do they work together, but we have our other expert, Alex Weig, and she's our special education teacher. And her job was very important because she came in and told us where the kids are and where we could bring them and their comfort level.
Good.
So having all these experts on that team is really what made it successful. And as far as working together, we have a program called Peer Buddies, and what was the disruptive part of the education was that in our Peer Buddy program, the special education children, or we call them our special engineers, they were the leaders. So they would actually walk around with their general ed partner, and they would train them on the different centers. And at each table, we had a whiteboard table so they could make out their plan right on the table, and then they could design their project and use their words, if they were verbal, because we have students that are not verbal, and still very successful, able to explain what they wanted to accomplish and how they were going to work together.
That's great. Skye, we're coming up on a break. Before we go to break, though, we're going to show a video that you prepared. So if you'll watch along with us, video that Skye has prepared. When we come back from the break, we'll talk some more about that. Thank you.
See you in a minute.
Skye Donzelli. Be right back. Welcome back to DisruptEDtv. My name is Al Cini.
I'm still Joe Osamendi.
Joe, it's a pleasure working with you, and a real pleasure working today with Skye Donzelli.
Thank you.
Who is our guest, talking about how special education doesn't have to be all that special. I mean, it could be more mainstream than a lot of you may imagine. We just saw a video, too, by the way, that you prepared, where you showed us challenged children working together on projects in an environment that was designed for them. So tell me about that video and what we saw in it.
I think that what you can really see from that video is the success of this project. You can see it in their faces and the confidence that they have and the teamwork that's going on there. And if it was a live video, you would hear words like, "I did it," or look, where can we do next? Or, you know, even one of the real quotes in our room is, "I want to be an engineer when I grow up."
Oh, that's you fill up a little bit when you say things
Oh,
like
I
that,
do.
don't you?
I
That's
do.
okay. I think that's important because I think you love these kids, and I think
Yeah.
you're doing this because you love these kids, and that's why it's so important.
And that's why I'm glad I'm here to share it, because it's so successful that part of the reason that I'm here today is that we can make sure that it gets out in other schools as well.
You can almost feel the energy in that video. It just almost
You
comes
can.
through.
It's just,
Yes.
it was all, and it's from the kids. It's
Yeah,
radiating from
exactly.
the kids, and that's all the energy of opportunity, which is
Absolutely.
terrific.
Yes.
So let's talk then about you mentioned this is something any school can do.
Yes.
But you pulled in experts. You mentioned it in the first segment.
Yes.
Maybe you can outline for the people taking notes out there what
Okay.
they can do to do this.
Well, we started with just a $1,000 grant, and when we say just, you can even do this at the dollar store if you wanted to go do dollar store STEM. You just have to Google it, and a million other ideas will come on. But what made this room successful is that we use the experts, but from our own school. Our speech therapist, Erin McCabe, we figured out what communications we could use in order to instill the general ed and our special engineers to be able to work together and talk. And even just teaching our general ed kids how to listen, because it was their turn to take the job to be the listener, not the teacher.
Right.
And so all those things had to be prepared before we even went into that room.
Well, that's great. Describe for us maybe a little bit of what goes on in that room. How many kids are we talking about in the room, and how many projects are going on at a time?
Well, it's a room where if you actually, when you look at the video, the banner says Bulldog Think Tank, because we're the Bulldogs, and STEM Innovation Stations. And we didn't necessarily just call it a STEM room because, again, budget limitations, how many rooms can you really make a universally designed furniture?
Right.
So we made an online sign up so any one of our teachers, general ed or special ed, or even together they could come down to teach any lesson. And they're in the middle of the heart of the school, which is the library. And you're surrounded by nonfiction books, and they have the computers, so you have digital and print information. So we're preparing them to succeed.
Well, that's terrific. And kids are helping each other in this classroom.
Yes, yes.
That's a very important thing. They're not competing with each other.
No.
They're helping each other. So if there's a kid who's maybe a little bit more challenged, somebody else who's able to do it will go and help them.
Yeah, well, and even it's at the point where the objective is just to be their own success. So there is no like end goal when it comes to STEM stations. It's innovation, and it's your choice of innovation. So one student's end goal will look a lot different than another student's, and that's okay because they're all learning in their own ways.
That's
And you've
very
given them
important.
the opportunity to do that, too.
Exactly, and the
It's more
tool and
important.
provided the tools.
Right, exactly.
Well, that's terrific. And so you've got not just special ed teachers in this environment, but teachers from different parts of the schools for different aspects of the project you're working.
Yes, yes,
So you break down those barriers too.
yes. We're one school.
That
Collaboration, total collaboration.
Yes.
Well, you know, that whole idea that we're one school is such a
Right.
powerful idea too, because a lot of times where specialization is important, we shouldn't knock that. I mean, there are definitely needs for
Yes,
specialties,
yes.
but breaking down the walls between the specialties avoids people falling through cracks, which is what we're trying to prevent here. We don't want people to fall through the crack between two specialties.
Yes,
You
or
know-
missing out on the things that they can accomplish.
And that would be, I mean, that is just
Yeah.
a huge, huge thing. That's such a great advantage.
I actually have a story where we have a little boy that is autistic and nonverbal, almost completely nonverbal, and he was having a really bad day because just imagine how hard it is to communicate and get your needs met. And we asked him if he wanted to come into the STEM room, and he transitioned from tears streaming down his face, walking into the STEM room, created a Lego robot, and then coded it. And even better than that, he revised it and was able to add sound and his own adjustments to make it his own. And the smile on his face is something that if he had words, you would just know he would say, "I'm a coder, I'm an engineer."
Wow, that is so. I
Great
mean,
story.
that's great. Okay, you almost don't have to answer this question because your face just answered it. But I'm going to ask you anyway. Why do you do this?
I've been a computer teacher for over 10 years, and I see that students have a love of technology, and sometimes even an obsession with technology. And then it's my job to teach them how to be creators of technology and not just consumers. And kids want to learn that. They don't want to be passive learners. And I'm in a school district that actually embeds a one-to-one laptop for 3 through 8, and then a 2-to-1 iPad ratio. And before we even handed out the technology, we made sure that our curriculum was ready to be project-based learning with technology.
Project-based learning for children with special needs.
Yes, for
Not
everyone.
just for everyone. And I mean,
Yes.
so we know, but that's project-based learning for everybody.
Yes.
Regardless of their physical impairment or mental challenges
Yeah.
or emotional difficulties. Because that's really, if we want them to be successful adults, we have to recognize that they can be successful children.
Yeah, and give them the tools that they're going to be using as adults.
What's really amazing, is your preparation is really fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, why it works out, because you built such a good foundation for success.
Yes.
Well, that research that you have to do, and talk a little bit too about schools that are out there and thinking, I could start this, but it feels like a lot of work.
Okay.
Talk a little bit about that. I mean, they can partner with others in their community, open the doors and let other people in.
Bring in
Yes.
experts.
Exactly. And so not only do you have experts in your school, but you have experts outside in your community. And sometimes those experts bring the money too, because you might need a little bit of
You
money.
get a grant or a little bit of help from
Yes, and we actually did have a grant from Ocean First, a $10,000 grant, because we created this vision on paper and presented it to them, and they believed in us. And we invited them back in to see it because we're preparing their workers
Right.
for the future. So
Absolutely.
why wouldn't they want to invest in us?
It's okay.
And that's what other schools should look to their communities to say, why wouldn't you want to invest in us?
We need to take a break. I just want to say before we take this break that Skye is the reason why we do this show.
Yep.
I mean, and it's such a pleasure having you on as a guest, and we hope you'll come back right after this break
Yeah.
to talk with Skye a little bit more.
See you in a little while.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. That's great. Welcome back to DisruptEDtv. My partner here's name is Joe Asamendi.
And my partner's name is Al Sinney, as usual.
Great partnership.
Absolutely.
Terrific working with you. But our guest today is Skye Donzelli, more important than anything, and she's got great messages.
Right.
Just before the break, Skye, we talked about organizations that you partner with who've turned out to be helpful to you.
Yes.
You mentioned PSE&G. Maybe you can talk about how you built that partnership up.
It was actually a grant, and you just have to search the internet to find out what grants are out there. And what was great is that they actually sent in people to come in to see our school so they could see the change. And I think just because you get a grant, and you're awarded the money, one of the great things is developing that relationship with the company and inviting them back in to see the change. And when we did invite some of our companies in, it says the first time they were ever invited in to see where their grant money went.
That's, and that is,
Yeah.
that's so important because it's, they have to know that there was, it's funny, we hear that ROI all the time. What's my return on investment? What's my return? There is no better return on an investment than the investment you can make in a project like yours.
Yes.
I think it's such a great program. And you also mentioned you have a relationship with the Liberty Science Center.
Yes, and partnerships aren't just about money. It's also about connecting and learning from. And when we visioned our STEM room, we envisioned Liberty Science Center. We wanted you to walk in and feel like you were in Liberty Science Center where you could just touch everything and explore everything. And so Liberty Science Center has been a great resource for us. And they we're so impressed with what we've done that they're connecting us to other schools, and we're actually video conferencing in to other schools and letting them with a tour of our STEM room so they could springboard off our success and we could help them.
That's
What a
very
great way
important.
to spread the word. Really.
Yes.
At the end of the program,
Absolutely.
you'll get an opportunity to tell everybody how to reach out to you to get
Okay.
that, because I think it's important for the people watching the program to know that Skye did it and you can do it too.
Yes.
And
Our
Skye
whole
wants to
team.
take. Skye wants to help you do that because the
Yes.
more of us who do this, the better our world becomes, and that's why I think it's such an important mission. And it's just such a pleasure to have you on. And I know the last person in the world you want to talk about is you.
But you're
So
gonna have to.
I am going to hold up your book.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, now, I'm going to hold it into this camera. I just want to say this is a book that Skye has written. You're a computer teacher, after all.
Yes, I'm a computer teacher, and what I've learned is that code is the language of computers, and students need to learn that language. And just as we learn a foreign language at an early age, we need to learn the language of computers and code. And this is kind of a hybrid book in a way that it's a fiction book where Selfie Sam, who is a little obsessed with selfies. We all know someone
think
like
that's great.
that. And he's a consumer of technology, where his sister, the girl role model, of course, is the creator of technology, and she's the coder. And they go through some adventures during the story where he has to learn coding skills in order to get his way out of it. And at the end of the book, it has coding challenges. So you know how we used to read those books where it was choose your own adventure?
Right.
Well, it's kind of like that, where you choose your own code as you go through the story.
That is great. I mean, I'm looking at the book, and it's obviously written for early
Yes, because-
education, elementary
yes.
education, and you've highlighted it with things like text blocks.
Yes. Oh,
things
yes.
that kids today would be very familiar
Yes,
with because that's how they communicate.
that's their reading.
That's great. And you said this is a bestseller on Amazon.
It's a bestseller under new releases for children's programming books and software. So it's been holding strong for 2 weeks. So hopefully when this airs, it still will.
Well, great message and in an entertainment package. It's entertaining to read.
It
Thank
really
you.
is. It's terrific.
Absolutely.
I think that is great. And it kind of ties in with what you want, which is really to make technology more accessible to
Yes.
everybody.
Right.
Even people that we might normally have excluded from that experience. You're saying it's an all-inclusive experience. Everybody has a place here.
It is. And a lot of the skills that we have our population right now, STEM jobs are growing more so than any other job out there. And we have so many students, 75% of our special ed is underemployed or unemployed. So we really need to give them the skills that they need to be successful. And STEM is a wonderful way to go. And coding, attention to details and pattern recognition is building off of some of the skills that these children have.
That's really important. You're developing skills in these children by involving them in these projects that they may not have otherwise had developed in them. And they're getting it in an age where it sticks and becomes
Right.
part of the way they live.
Yes.
So, because this is so much harder to learn later, you don't want to wait until you're in the occupational stage of education. You want to get it at the early stage where it can really make a difference.
Yes.
Now, well, you talked about the whole spectrum of the kids who are benefiting by this, and that includes autistic children. Is that
Yes.
right? Is that a special case? Maybe you can describe that a little bit.
Yes, we have such a wide range of abilities that we make sure that our room meets those needs at all areas. So even with circuits, we'll have snap circuits where students can actually build circuits as a puzzle. So it's almost like a puzzle piece. And then we'll also have choices of just regular circuits where they actually are making the connections to the battery and having to do the positive and the negative.
Really?
So every student gets to do circuits, but it might be just on their own level.
Well, that's terrific. And the looking forward for each one of these children could be in electronic engineering.
Yes.
It could be in software engineering. I mean, I want to be an engineer. That story that you told,
True story.
where that kid says to you, "I want to be an engineer," and the way you set that up for them and made that possible for them, that is something to be proud of. That is just an amazing story.
You built
Thank
an
you.
ability for everybody to succeed.
Yes.
That's the beautiful thing.
That's
Yes,
so key.
and we use the resources in our school to make sure, because we all have the same goal.
That's
Exactly.
great.
You include the entire community.
Yes.
Including sponsors, parents, teachers, experts. I mean, you built your own puzzle.
Yes.
And put it together to make one big picture.
Yes,
And it all starts with designing a room, a space, not the whole school. Like you said, you don't have the money to redo the whole school. You start with a space where these children are going to learn these things, and you design it working with specialists to make sure that children with autism or physical disabilities or cognitive disabilities
Yes.
are all equally comfortable in that room.
yes,
When they are, then they just move at whatever pace that makes sense. And you fill it with wonderful things
yes.
that you can get at the dollar store.
And you can. I mean, we were lucky enough to get money from a corporation. However, STEM is something that you could build with popsicle sticks and index cards.
It's very, very important. And coming up on the end of our program, so this is your opportunity to speak directly into your camera
On my shoulder.
and tell everybody how you can help them and how they can reach you.
Okay, well, my whole team is at Memorial Elementary School, and you can reach us at my email, sdonzelli, DONZELLI, at howell.k12.nj.us, and we can set up a special private tour with video conferencing of our STEM room so we could help you do the same thing.
That is terrific. Skye Donzelli, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Skye, you are
Such
an
a
inspiration to
wonderful-
everybody.
Absolutely
Thank you.
wonderful
Thank you.
interview, and it was just terrific talking to you.
Thank you.
And thank all of you for joining us on DisruptEDtv. And my name is Al Cini.
I'm Joe Osmendi.
And we both hope that you'll take one or two of the ideas that
Right.
Skye shared with us today and make a difference tomorrow in your school.
Yep. See you in the
Thank you
next
very
edition.
much. Yeah.
Thank you.